Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio to shed more light on the Libyan issue by Dr. Cherif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Dr. Amir, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Amir, first of all, now, quite recently, the Prime Minister led a high-level delegation, numerous ministers going to Libya, supporting a reconstruction plan in the neighboring country. First of all, how would you view such a step by the Egyptian government and presidency, lending such a strong hand to Libya and being a major part in the reconstruction process?
Well, it's obvious that Egypt's policy towards Libya was very, very studied. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, when he spoke about the red line, everyone saw that Egypt is heading towards a military confrontation on Libya's soil. But I think that Egyptian leadership had something else in mind. The red line was to stop the war, to settle things, and restart reconstruction. And by this visit, Egypt is showing the world that it was standing beside its word from the first day, that Egypt is willing to rebuild Libya, to bring peace and to start the national reconciliation inside of this country, of this war-torn country. We are the first country, Egypt is the first country who headed to find a solution with Prime Minister Dbeibeh when he came to Egypt, and then we started this visit. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, he gave his orders to the government to start now the investment there, although the other countries, all other countries are still skeptical about what's going on in Libya. Well, we are saying, well, we're starting the reconstruction, and I'm sure with this visit you will find other countries will take the same steps towards Libya, because they are sure that Egypt is a guarantor of peace and security in this region.
Yes. Well, Doctor, before we start talking about the prospects of cooperation between both countries, let's take a closer look at the Libyan situation. Now, the Libyan situation over the past few months showed promising development, and the reconciliation and reconstruction process, the political process, has taken giant leaps we haven't seen in other parts of the continent and the Arab world in general. What makes Libya so receptive to all the efforts, international efforts, and the efforts made by Egypt in terms of bridging the gaps between the factions there, as opposed to what's happening in Syria, what's happening in other parts of the world?
Because Libya saw the results of foreign intervention, mercenaries, organized crime of illegal immigration. We saw literally slaves being sold, and in the 21st century it was a disaster. Boats filled with illegal immigrants sinking in the Mediterranean, Libyans being kidnapped, they are scattered everywhere, the oil is being taken by other countries, stolen, literally stolen. So it was destruction from A to Z. I think that President Sisi was the only leader who gave hope to the Libyans, who told them, you're not alone. We fought a war of diplomacy for the sake of Libya, and they are our brothers. We spoke with the Europeans, especially with France, to accept Marshal Khalifa Haftar at that time, who was the only one capable of reorganizing the forces of Libya to fight terrorism. We managed to introduce him to international community. President Sisi spoke with his counterparts in Italy and in Austria to organize the conferences about Libya, and even the conferences about Africa. Libya was the main topic that Egypt presented to the international community. We also fought in the UN for lifting the embargo, the arms embargo that was imposed on Colonel Gaddafi, that should be lifted from Libya now, because they have to defend themselves. So Libya saw the forces who destroyed its country, and they saw the forces who were trying to find a solution for them and to help them. That's why they now decided to take advantage of this opportunity. And I think it's rare that countries like Libya have such opportunities to resolve their problems. As you said, we have the problem of Syria, it's very complicated. Yemen is disastrous. Iraq, we all know how there is the intervention of Iran and the US inside the country, and Saudi Arabia is trying to counter the movement of the Shia there, of Iran. So we have three disastrous examples. So I think Libya, they know that they are fortunate to have a neighbor like Egypt. They are fortunate to have a mediator of peace like President Sisi. Prime Minister Dbeibeh of Libya, many commentators said in Egypt that there is a question mark about his affiliation, political affiliation. Well, we didn't listen to that because we said, President Sisi said, we will work with anyone who wants peace and prosperity for Libya, and that's what we need.
Doctor, you've mentioned many factors that have affected the Libyan situation. You've mentioned international interference, international players there, mercenaries, terrorists, the theft of their oil resources. All these things, is it safe to say that they've now been totally eliminated, or are we at least 75% clear? Is the environment there safe and secure for us first and the international community to just go full throttle ahead with big plans of investment as Egypt has done?
Well, from what we see on the ground, nothing is done from day one. We have to work. We have worked a lot in Egypt so that Libya would achieve what they are living now. Of course, there's so much to be done. So much to be done in Libya, but we never lose hope. This is what geopolitics in this region is about. You move forward and you know there will be a counterattack, but you have to move forward. You cannot just escape and keep losing ground. We have to work with the Libyans. We have to encourage them to have trust between them. This is a tribal country. And Gaddafi managed to reorganize all these tribes under his rule. So we have to understand that they have this kind of culture, of tribal culture, that we have to make all the tribes in Libya work together. And this would take time. We managed to achieve this equation with success in South Sudan. Egypt mediated there, and we managed to find a solution between Salva Kiir and his vice president, who was from another major tribe. But we managed to reconcile the factions there. So I think that the same thing is happening in Libya. We need work, we need determination, and I think, and I said it before, once we will invest money and projects, I think that the Libyans will understand that prosperity is the only way.
Well, Egypt has also mediated between the tribal leaders and the different factions and divisions within Libya in the past as well. And we've seen a political roadmap that has been drawn, and everything's going so far so good. Elections slated for December 24th as well. Are you optimistic of having this process moving very smoothly until the presidential elections take place there? Or do you feel, as you've mentioned, maybe other players would actually try and ruin such a process?
Well, in politics and geopolitics in this region, we have two arms, the peace and the force. You cannot work only with peace, and we cannot use only force. So I think that we will push peace forward, but we will always show those factions that you spoke about, foreign intervention, I mean, that we will not hesitate to, I won't say use force, but remind them of the red line again. And we will tell them again that we all know what you have done to destroy this country, and you destroyed it enough. But we're still offering peace. We will work for peace, because if we will stop working for peace and stability in this country, that means it's a major defeat for Egypt's national security. Egypt is working for stability and peace in this country, and we will go forward. Whenever there are mercenaries again working there, whenever there are forces trying to hijack the political process there, or recruit some players there for their accounts, I think that Egypt has the diplomatic and the intelligence skills to monitor all that and deliver the messages, the iron messages, at the right time. And we did it before, we'll do it again.
Dr. Amir, now, the whole situation in Libya has been in political turmoils for a decade now, since the 2011 toppling of Muammar Gaddafi. It's a big reconstruction process. Egypt goes there first. Where do we start? Do we start with the safety and security? Do we start with the infrastructure, the housing? I mean, the Prime Minister went with all sorts of ministers there. But where do we start? What is the first point? Where is the starting point that Egypt should focus on in order to pave the way for a proper reconstruction process?
Well, peace and security is always the base, especially in the Middle East. If you don't offer a solid ground of peace, security, and also institutions, that's very important. For example, if you have an investor working there and he had a security problem, he has to find the legal institution, the security institution, which will protect him. He has to call the Ministry of Interior or even task force to help him. He won't call mercenaries from outside the country to come, or he will come with his own men and forces. So a country that wants to have a proper ground of infrastructure has to offer, first of all, security. We offer this to our brothers there. We told them before, we will help you fight terrorism. Everyone thought that means Egypt will interfere physically inside Libya. No, that's not our way of working. We give logistic expertise. We help them understand how to counter terrorism. We give them the pills of info. It means that we give the info to the persons there. We tell them, be aware, there is this type of trafficking. We offer all the grounds and the data that has to be used to counter terrorism. So I think we offered all that. When Prime Minister Madbouli went by himself and all the ministers, this was the show of solidarity. It's not a show of strength. That's not our way of working. No, these are our brothers.
Yes.
We are assuring them, you're not alone. We help you in security. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi by himself was working with all the Libyan factions to find a solution, fight terrorism there. And then we're heading to the second phase, which is infrastructure. So Egypt started phase 1, and we're continuing phase 2, and this is an excellent sign to our friends and partners in Europe.
Well, Prime Minister Prime Minister Madbouli actually spoke on a number of issues when he landed in Libya. One of the main things was reopening as soon as possible the Egyptian diplomatic missions in Tripoli and Benghazi. How important is such a move in terms of encouraging other international partners and international countries to reopen their missions there? And would that also work as some sort of a channel for the Egyptian investments and the Egyptian cooperation that will be taking place in Libya through these missions in Tripoli and Benghazi?
Whenever there is an Egyptian movement in diplomacy towards a country, all the Arab countries follow. This was since the Arab League was founded in 1945. So I think once we will be heading towards this process of working to have our embassy, our diplomatic representation there, I think that the Gulf states, especially the Emirates, will go there. And other Arab countries will follow us, that means investment. And I think that once Egypt and our brothers in the Emirates will start investing in a country like Libya, I think that the Europeans also will think about it. They will work there because they know that the two major forces in this region now are Egypt and the Emirates, working in development and reconstruction and financing all that. So I think that the Arab countries, they have a huge role now to show this, the solidarity with Libya, to follow Egypt's example, and to find a solution that Libya will always stay under the Arab umbrella. No Turkish intervention anymore, as we are trying now to recover with Iraq that there will be no more Iranian influence, or in Syria, the same thing. So we are trying to regain all these Arab countries inside the Arab house again. And then I think that all the European community, they look forward to work in the oil investment, for example, there. And I think that they will follow our example, but maybe it will take time.
Yes. Well, Libya is our direct Western neighbor, and for decades, Egyptians have been working there in the millions. And over the past few years, they've obviously been back to Egypt. And one of the files and one of the issues they spoke about during their meeting in Libya was the return of the Egyptian workers back to Libya. That's about 2 to 3 million Egyptian workers going there. Also resuming direct flights between both countries, trying to establish a maritime route through the ports between Egypt and Libya. How much would that benefit the Libyan economy? How much would that benefit and affect the Egyptian economy, having 2-3 million workers going back to Libya? Such a move, I mean, talking about not just like potential projects and investment, we're talking about personnel, manpower, labor, Egyptian citizens going back to Libya.
Well, what we saw was the 21 Egyptian martyrs who were killed there in 2015. I think that this was the nightmare that we all lived at that time. We are trying to recover from that, and I think that Egypt now is trying not to open the door quickly for for the Egyptians to go there, because these are young people who have only ambitions to work and feed their families. So we have to offer them, first of all, a safe haven, places where they have protection from the Libyans, protections from the Egyptian institutions. That's why still, up till now, all the Egyptian governmental institutions are calling upon the Egyptians, the young people, not to follow the illegal ways of entry towards Libya, because only through governmental channels they could ensure the security. So I think this would take time, because we have to coordinate with the Libyans, the local forces there. And this is very easy now, because parts of Libya, and like Benghazi and other parts, they recognize that Egypt was helpful. Egypt offered them all the logistic materials to fight terrorism. So I think Egyptians are welcome there. Egyptian workers are known for their skills there, and they know already the terrain and how to work there from other nationalities. So I think that, well, the numbers will not be that high like it was before, because we have to ensure that there will I will say it frankly, there will be no more kidnappings or they could be used as hostages or to influence Egypt, because we all know the new Egypt now is very keen that there will be no Egyptian hurt outside of its country. Whether in Eritrea there was some Egyptian workers there a few days ago. We worked until they were released. We do the same thing in other countries. So I think that we have to ensure their safety and security. And this would be easy to be done, but let's wait until things are very, very clear for us.
Yes. Well, Dr. Amir, we're used to Egypt being a very wise and patient diplomatic player. Egypt takes its time diplomatically, and they know exactly when to move and how to move. And to make such a bold statement, going full force into Libya with all these projects and opening the transportation between both countries so boldly, Egypt probably knows exactly what it's doing and will be able to safeguard their citizens and safeguard their interests and projects there. But you've said that maybe other countries would take more time and would be a bit more hesitant. But if Egypt is doing that full-heartedly, why would other international countries and the international community be a little bit slower, a little bit less, more hesitant?
Because some of them have different equation than Egypt. For example, let's say many of the Western forces, or powers, I mean, they have some economic interests with a country like Qatar, who finance, unfortunately, some hostile forces there. So maybe they have different equation. Every country has its own interest. We were clear about our interests. We said we only want peace and security for the Libyans, and we don't wish to see any other country financing terrorists there, sending mercenaries, and we named them by the name, and we asked. Until now, in our diplomatic contacts with Ankara, we're telling them, well, you have to withdraw your mercenaries from there because they show it on TV. So we're telling them, show again on TV that they are leaving the country. So I think that the message is clear. So if we will move boldly like that, that's because we know that we have cleaned a certain part of Libya. It's again under the sovereignty of 100% Libyans. No other countries are interfering there. So maybe other countries are hesitating because they wish not to be in direct confrontation with Turkey or Qatar. Well, I think that once the Libyans will ask all foreign intervention to leave their country, I think that everyone would invest there.
Yes.
Like Egypt.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Egypt is planning on investing heavily in Libya during the visit by Prime Minister Madbouli and numerous ministers from the Egyptian government. Egypt has signed 11 memorandums of understanding for joint cooperation between both countries. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and the head of the National Unity Government, Abdelhamid Al Dbeiba, signed Tuesday 11 MOUs to enhance bilateral cooperation between the two countries in various fields. During his visit to Tripoli, Madbouli met with Dbeiba and discussed boosting relations between the two countries, along with preserving stability and security in Libya. At a joint press conference, Dbeiba praised the Egyptian role in supporting political dialogue between the political factions in Libya, along with cooperating with them to reach a comprehensive solution to the Libyan crisis. During the conference, Dbeiba said that Libya's ability to resuming relations with neighboring countries is a sign of the country's stability. He said that direct flights between Cairo and Tripoli to be resumed starting Wednesday, and that the Egyptian embassy in Tripoli to reopen after Eid al-Fitr. For his part, Madbouli noted that one of the signed MOUs was related to the returning of the Egyptian workers to Libya to contribute with the Libyans in construction and developing of the country. He stressed that Egypt supports all measures and steps being taken by the Libyan government to achieve stability for the Libyan people, and underlined that the signing of cooperation MOUs between Egypt and Libya in health, electricity, manpower and industry as well. During the talks, the two sides agreed on implementing a number of major projects in electricity, energy, communication, information technology and infrastructure domains. Since 2015, Libya has been divided between warring administrations, one in the east and one in the west, both backed by different foreign powers. The new Libyan Unified Interim Executive Authority was selected in February with the assistance of a United Nations mediated process that brought together various delegates from Libya's warring factions. It compromised 4 leaders to guide the country through national elections in December, with Mohammed Manfi chosen the head of the 3-man presidency council and Abdelhamid Mohamed Dbeiba as the interim prime minister in March. Libya's parliament voted to back the unity government led by the interim Dbeiba.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Amir. Doctor, now the Minister of Health, Education, memorandums of understanding talking about agriculture, information and communication technology, talking about building a school there, a hospital there. We're talking about a general, all-inclusive sort of restructuring process in Libya. What would you say are the main pillars for such a reconstruction process, and how receptive do you think the Libyan side will be to, do they have all the know-how, do they have all the manpower to really push for this reconstruction, or do we still need more?
Well, it depends upon the expertise there on the ground there. Unfortunately, Libya, under the rule of Gaddafi for 40 years, they were a closed country. So there were no investment there, literally. The late years of Gaddafi, his son started some connections with the West, and the Americans started normalizing the relations, but the Libyans themselves never really worked with foreign companies inside of their country. Although the Libyans, they are very skillful in finance and in business. We all know there are famous businessmen, Libyan businessmen lived in Egypt and other countries, so they know the know-how. And this is one of the things that which is positive, let's not say positive, but could be helpful for all the countries who faced wars inside their territory, like, for example, Lebanon or in Armenia. You all know about the businessmen there. They are famous outside of their country. So I think that foreign Libyan businessmen could come back and invest inside of Libya, and this has to be done by the initiative of the Libyan government to call upon their sons outside of Libya to come back and invest in Libya. What Egypt is doing is giving a very bold sign to the world that we have to invest in Libya so this country will regain confidence in itself. It will attract their own citizens outside the diaspora to come and work again. We will introduce Libya to the international arena. And this is very benefit for Egypt. Why? Because you have 2 scenarios. Whether you will have neighbors having wars all the time, and of course this will affect security or not, will affect investment in your country, or you will work in stabilizing the situation in this region and build routes. There will be a route between Egypt, Libya and Tunisia, and we will show the world that we could ensure security in this region. This will attract all the region and Europe to come and invest. For example, look in the Gulf states. Whenever there is war, all the Gulf states are affected. Whenever there is peace, there is prosperity and business going on. So we have to do the same thing. We have to show the world that the southern coast of the Mediterranean is very peaceful. There is stability. There is a strong country called Egypt which is ensuring all this. Come and invest in Egypt. You will find Egyptian investors also in Libya. This will be a huge economic force in this region, will bring prosperity to everyone.
Yes. Well, Egypt is pushing for a political development to take place in Libya, and they want it to be a Libyan sort of dialogue to limit any foreign interference there. Now, signing all these 11 memorandums of understanding during these few months, up until a president is being elected in 7 to 8 months by the end of the year, do you see this as laying down the foundation for reconstruction up until an elected president shows up in Libya and is being elected, and then the work will start effectively, or do we start the work immediately?
We have to start the work not immediately, but slowly, but in the same time, there is an important factor. There has to be a political figure which will be working with the Libyans until the elections. Libya, especially in Libya, as I said, this tribal country, the tribal country needs a leader. So there has to be someone who will come and tell the Libyans, I will lead you for prosperity. I will work with a great country like Egypt. I will work with our partners in the EU. I will work with all the friends of Libya and stand against all the foreign intervention. So there will have to be a candidate, a political figure, which will represent the people of Libya and will reunite them again. And I think that he will find the support of Cairo immediately because we want to see prosperity in this country. So I think that the time there will be someone capable of speaking on behalf of the people of Libya, because whatever we are doing, we won't deliver the message like the Libyans will do. There has to be someone, we will endorse him, we will help him go and talk in front of the international arena to defend Libya's cause. But I think that the Libyans now, before we start, we're giving them the investment, we're giving them the assurances, but I think that they have to find now, work quickly on finding a political figure which will represent them, and maybe two, so it will be elections, and then there will be a voice for Libya.
Yes. Well, until that happens, Prime Minister Dbeibeh is practically in charge there. How do you feel the Libyan people have responded to him, and how the international community pardon, has responded to him? It's a short period of time since he's been Prime Minister, but how would you assess his performance and how he's perceived by Libyans and the international community?
Well, first of all, he's young, he's a young man, that's very good. And I think Libya needs someone like him, that process. I think it was very, very smart of him to visit Cairo as the first country to visit. That means he understands geopolitics. He knows to whom he has to talk if he wants to see his country prosperous. Well, there were some people, some political analysts putting some question marks upon his political affiliation. I think that in geopolitics, once the person is in charge, he knows that reality is reality. You have to work with those who will help you, not those who will harm you. So I think that he's trying to make the good choices for his country. About the international community, I think that there is the problem of the COVID-19, so he cannot make all these visits like to Europe. Everything is closed. So I think that it's very smart of him working with Egypt now. He could listen to the advice of President Sisi, who's giving him real sincere advice how to rebuild the country. We went through the same experience, and President Sisi was there for his people, and with the people he worked together. We all worked together to rebuild Egypt. I think that he could transmit, President Sisi could transmit to Prime Minister Dbeibeh the prospect that you have to work and love your country and put aside all tribal and political affiliations, Do not listen to foreign intervention. Just work for your country. So I think that he's building the foundation, political foundation for his career. But we will see, because there are other political figures. There is people who still wish to see Saif al-Islam Gaddafi to come back. Others see other political figures. So I think it will be interesting. Libya will have a political life, but also let's not forget that the tribal culture is very present, and Prime Minister Dbeibeh, if he understands that, he will find a good prospect in the future.
Well, you've mentioned before the problem of the oil theft in Libya. One of the main strong points of Libya was its oil resources. Do you feel it will still pose a problem? Does it still pose a concern?
Well, this was one of the biggest and the toughest problems facing Libya. I don't wish to speak about countries who are involved in that, but many countries, unfortunately, were in this business. And I think now it's being very, very monitored. Egypt has its naval forces present, so it's not easy that it will be this kind of theft like it was in 2011. They know that we are watching closely, and we are not willing to let this happen again. I think that countries who are trying to kidnap this region, like Turkey, for example, and Qatar, to control Benghazi and this part of Libya where there is the oil, understood now it won't be easy for them to do that again. I think that Egypt is working very closely so that these resources will be in the hands of Libyans only, and patriot Libyans only, under the supervision of the armed forces of Libya.
Well, Dr. Amir, one final question, because we're running out of time now. In politics, it's about mutual interests. Now, Egypt is going heads on, full speed ahead in Libya within the reconstruction and the cooperation between both countries. One of the main interests for Egypt is to have a safe, stable, and secure Western neighbor. That's understood. But what else would Egypt benefit from having, being the first country really to take major leaps in the reconstruction process, reimagining and reconstructing the whole Libyan state? What would Egypt benefit as well?
Well, it will show the world that we're not only building our country, we are building other countries. And this is a show of strength, I can say. Now, this show of strength that we are a peace-loving country. We have the capabilities of working outside of our borders. We've done the same thing in Tanzania, in Congo, in South Sudan. We even helped our brothers, and I say our brothers in Ethiopia, to build projects there. We work everywhere. We help the Lebanese when they had their disaster. We are helping Jordan. We are helping every country. So I think that the message would be very clear to the world that we are able to work outside of Egypt. Of course, when there will be Egyptian investment, this will bring us foreign currency. This will be helpful for our economy. Workers, Egyptian workers, will go there and work there. So I'm saying that it's very, very positive to think outside of the box, that we're not working inside of Egypt only. We're not working to destroy other countries. No, we are investing and we are working outside of Egypt. Libya has to be stable, sovereign, and prosper, and they deserve it. We are there for them. They are our brothers, and we won't be late to help them.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on this very positive note, we understand from Dr. Amir that it is not just a rebuilding or a reconstruction process that is taking place in Libya. It is also safeguarding your western borders. It's also pardon, it will help rebuild and help strengthen as well the political status of both countries, Egypt and Libya. And hopefully this would be only one example that would be followed by other countries as well going through similar turmoils. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Dr. Cherif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Dr. Amir, always a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on NILE International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.